The world does not end with fire falling from the sky or sirens screaming across every horizon. It ends quietly, in the moment, when the lights flicker once, then twice, and then never come back on. When elevators freeze between floors, when traffic lights die and intersections turn into choke points, and when millions of people realize simultaneously that modern life only exists as long as electricity does. Scarcity alters behavior long before violence appears. And this is where urban blackout defense becomes psychological, as much as physical. When resources become uncertain, humans default to social probing, testing who has what, who is stable, and who is weak. This probing rarely starts as aggression. It begins with questions in stairwells, knocks on doors, framed as concern, casual conversations about how long the outage might last. These interactions are not harmless. They are data collection. In emergency sociology, this phase is known as resource mapping, an informal process where individuals unconsciously assess distribution networks in the absence of formal systems. The hidden danger is that every answer, every visible supply, every expressed confidence feeds into an emerging mental map of opportunity and leverage. The overlooked science here lies in behavioral thermodynamics, the idea that human systems, like physical systems, move toward lower energy states under stress. When obtaining resources requires less effort from one source than another, pressure accumulates toward that source. In blackout conditions, households that appear calm, illuminated, or organized radiate low-effort potential. They become entropy sinks. This is why defensive preparation must include social signal dampening. The goal is not isolation, which can backfire, but controlled ambiguity, neutral responses, minimal visible activity, and consistent routines that do not signal surplus. All reduce pressure gradients. This principle appears repeatedly in disaster research following hurricanes, earthquakes, and prolonged outages, or households that maintained low visibility experienced fewer confrontations regardless of actual preparedness level. A deep technical breakdown reveals that boundary defense in urban settings is rarely about fortification and more about access control psychology. Most residential doors are not designed to withstand sustained force, but most intrusions do not involve sustained force. They involve persuasion, opportunism, and timing. Reinforcing doors and locks matters, but so does understanding human thresholds. People are less likely to escalate when faced with uncertainty. A door that appears unoccupied is often bypassed in favor of one that suggests resources but no resistance. This counterintuitive reality explains why some heavily prepared individuals become targets, while less visibly prepared ones are ignored. Defensive prep moves exposed in blackout conditions emphasize making your space cognitively uninteresting. Historical evidence reinforces this. During extended outages following Hurricane Sandy, buildings that maintained minimal exterior lighting and limited visible activity experienced fewer unsolicited interactions compared to those that ran generators openly. In contrast, buildings with audible generators reported repeated visits from neighbors seeking access, assistance, for information, which sometimes escalated into conflict when expectations were unmet. The generator itself was not the threat. The signal it emitted was energy availability is power, and power attracts attention when systems collapse. This brings us to the third defensive move: internal power management that prioritizes invisibility. Battery-based systems, low wattage lighting, and energy scheduling reduce the need for generators and minimize acoustic and visual signatures. From an engineering standpoint, this is load optimization under constrained conditions, rather than replicating normal energy consumption. Blackout resilience depends on identifying critical loads and eliminating non-essential ones. Communication devices, medical equipment, and minimal lighting take precedence. Hydro appliances become liabilities. This is not about comfort sacrifice. It is about extending operational time while avoiding detection. The science of energy density supports this approach. Stored electrical energy is finite, and the rate of discharge determines both longevity and exposure. The stakes escalate further as sanitation degrades. Toilets cease functioning reliably. Trash accumulates. Odors emerge. These are not just health issues. They are defensive ones. Smell is an often ignored detection vector. In dense urban environments, odors travel through hallways, stairwells, and ventilation shafts. Improper waste management broadcasts occupancy and activity levels. Defensive preparation includes understanding how to isolate waste, control odor, and maintain hygiene without drawing attention. Historically, disease outbreaks during prolonged outages have been linked not to lack of supplies, but to breakdowns in waste handling protocols. Cleanliness becomes concealment. Another misunderstood factor is vertical vulnerability. High-rise living changes blackout dynamics dramatically. Without elevators, vertical movement becomes physically taxing. This alters population distribution within buildings. Lower floors become more desirable due to easier access, while upper floors experience isolation. From a defensive standpoint, this creates predictable traffic patterns. Stairwells become arteries. Knowing when and how these arteries are used allows for temporal avoidance. Moving during low traffic windows reduces encounters. Remaining stationary during peak movement preserves anonymity. This is not paranoia. It is applied crowd flow analysis, a discipline used in urban planning and evacuation modeling. As blackout duration extends, communication scarcity becomes acute. Cellular networks degrade under load. Internet access disappears. Information asymmetry grows. In this vacuum, rumors function as decision drivers. Defensive preparation includes establishing trusted information channels before outages occur, whether through battery-powered radios or pre-arranged community contacts. The key is filtering signal from noise. Acting on unverified information increases exposure and risk. Historical blackouts show that misinformation spreads faster than factual updates, leading to unnecessary movement, resource hoarding, and confrontations. Stability favors those who wait for confirmation before acting. The fourth factors converge toward a critical transition point. As stored resources dwindle and external assistance remains absent, urban blackouts shift from inconvenience to survival challenge. Defensive preparation must evolve accordingly. What worked on day 1 may fail on day 5. The environment becomes adaptive, responding to behavior patterns and resource flows. Understanding this adaptive loop is essential because the next phase exposes the most dangerous misconception of all, that threats come primarily from strangers, when in reality, proximity and familiarity often define risk. Once systems collapse and social pressure intensifies beyond polite norms. As time stretches on, the illusion that danger comes from unknown outsiders begins to erode, replaced by a more uncomfortable reality, documented repeatedly. in prolonged urban crises. Risk most often emerges from proximity. When systems fail, people do not scatter randomly. They compress into familiar networks, buildings, and blocks. This compression intensifies social friction. Neighbors who previously exchanged nods now share walls under conditions of scarcity, uncertainty, and psychological fatigue. Defensive preparation during blackouts must therefore account for relational dynamics, not just physical ones. The quiet ending of the world is not marked by invasion, but by erosion, as expectations shift and boundaries blur under sustained stress. The overlooked principle here is stress accumulation. Human tolerance for uncertainty has measurable limits. Cognitive load increases as routines fail, information disappears, and effort rises for basic tasks. Neuroscience research shows that prolonged stress reduces impulse control and increases threat sensitivity. In blackout conditions, this manifests as misinterpretation of neutral actions as hostile, heightened territoriality, and rapid escalation from requests to confrontation. Defensive moves exposed by these dynamics focus on reducing perceived threat signals. Predictable behavior stabilizes interactions. Erratic or defensive posturing, even when justified, can amplify fear responses in others. A technical breakdown of this phenomenon reveals the role of cortisol-driven under chronic stress. The brain shifts from analytical processing to heuristic shortcuts. People rely on visible cues to make rapid judgments. A reinforced door, audible power source, or guarded demeanor may signal preparedness, but it can also signal hoarding and refusal, triggering moral rationalizations for forced sharing. Disaster psychology literature documents this repeatedly. Perceived inequality under scarcity justifies aggression in the minds of those who feel deprived. Defensive preparation, therefore, involves managing perceptions as much as resources. Historical cases illustrate this pattern starkly. During the prolonged power outages in parts of Argentina in the late 1980s, residential conflicts increased not between strangers, but among neighbors, over access to shared resources like water, fuel, and information. Similarly, in post-earthquake blackouts in Haiti, disputes within communities often preceded any external threats. These events underscore a buried truth. Community cohesion can be both a shield and a liability, depending on how boundaries are maintained. Defensive prep is not antisocial. It is This leads into the fifth defensive move: resource opacity. Sharing selectively can preserve relationships, but broadcasting inventory invites pressure. From a systems perspective, resources are not just supplies, they are leverage points. The mistake many make is either total secrecy or uncontrolled generosity. Both extremes create instability. Controlled assistance, framed as limited and temporary, maintains social equilibrium while preserving internal reserves. This approach aligns with humanitarian logistics principles, which emphasize rationing and expectation management to prevent collapse of distribution networks. At the individual level, it reduces resentment and suspicion. Another buried technical factor is metabolic strain. Blackouts alter physical exertion patterns. Stairs replace elevators. Manual tasks replace automated ones. Caloric expenditure increases, just as food availability decreases. Defensive preparation must include energy budgeting, not just for devices, but for fatigue, reduces situational awareness, reaction time, and emotional regulation. This compounds risk. Historically, many injuries and conflicts during blackouts occur not during peak tension, but during exhaustion phases when judgment fails. Maintaining rest cycles, hydration, and caloric intake is therefore a defensive priority, not a comfort concern. The escalation of stakes becomes evident when municipal response remains absent. Trash accumulation attracts pests. Water contamination risks rise. Illness spreads quietly. Defensive prep in this phase includes environmental control within living spaces, sealing entry points against rodents, managing ventilation without powered systems, and isolating sick individuals reduce secondary crises that force movement or exposure. Public health failures during blackouts are often invisible until they overwhelm households, at which point defensive options narrow rapidly. At this stage, movement decisions become critical. Staying put may no longer be viable if sanitation or security degrades beyond manageable levels. Yet evacuation during blackouts is one of the highest risk actions possible. Transportation systems are compromised. Fuel access is limited. Traffic control is non-existent. The hidden science here involves risk, trade-off analysis. Evacuation only improves survival odds if destination certainty outweighs transit risk. Historically, many fatalities during extended outages occur during poorly timed evacuations driven by fear rather than analysis. Defensive preparation includes predefined evacuation criteria established before stress impairs judgment. Urban blackout defense also intersects with fire risk. Without power, fire detection and suppression systems degrade. Candle use increases. Cooking shifts to improvised methods. Fire spreads faster in darkened buildings where alarms and sprinklers fail. Defensive moves include eliminating open flames where possible, maintaining fire extinguishers, and understanding manual suppression techniques. Fire is an equalizer in blackouts, destroying resources and forcing exposure regardless of preparedness level. Many underestimate this threat because it lacks the drama of human conflict. Yet historical data shows fire-related incidents spike during extended outages. The pattern emerging across all these factors is one of compounding vulnerability. No single failure causes collapse. Instead, layers of small breakdowns interact until defensive margins vanish. This is the system's reality of urban blackouts. They are not singular events, but processes. Defensive preparation is therefore iterative, requiring constant reassessment of environment, resources, and social dynamics. The mistake is assuming a static threat model. As blackout duration extends further, the environment begins to select for those who can adapt quietly and decisively. Noise attracts attention. Light attracts pressure. Movement attracts risk. The sixth defensive move, which becomes critical here, involves information control. Knowing when not to act is as important as knowing what to do. Silence becomes strategic. Observation replaces reaction. Those who survive longest in blackout conditions are not the most aggressive or the most visible, but the most disciplined in managing their footprint. This discipline sets the stage for the final escalation. When external factors re-enter the system, aid arrives unevenly. Authorities reassert control selectively. Resources flow unpredictably. Those who maintained low profiles often navigate this transition with fewer conflicts and losses. Those who drew attention earlier face scrutiny, expectations, or resentment. Understanding this endgame requires stepping back to see the large-scale pattern governing all collapses of infrastructured societies, a pattern that reveals why the world ends quietly, and why defense, in its truest sense, is about alignment with that reality, rather than resistance to it. When external intervention finally begins to flicker back into existence, it rarely restores normalcy evenly, and this unevenness introduces a new category of risk that most people never anticipate. Aid does not arrive everywhere at once. Power restoration follows technical priorities, not human need. Some neighborhoods regain electricity, while others remain dark. And that contrast becomes a destabilizing force in itself. Areas still without power experience intensified pressure as displaced individuals gravitate toward zones of partial recovery. Defensive preparation must therefore anticipate not just absence, but asymmetry. Being close to restored infrastructure without visibly benefiting from it can be safer than appearing fully operational while surrounded by deprivation. The hidden principle governing this phase is expectation realignment. Once people believe relief is imminent, tolerance for hardship drops sharply. This paradoxical effect is well documented in disaster recovery studies. When hope returns, patience collapses. Minor delays feel like betrayals. This psychological shift fuels conflict more effectively than desperation alone. Defensive behavior during this phase involves minimizing perceived advantage. Running lights, charging devices publicly, or resuming routines prematurely broadcasts that you are ahead in the recovery curve, which can trigger resentment or renewed probing. The quiet discipline that preserved safety earlier remains relevant, even as systems begin to reboot. A technical examination of infrastructure restoration explains why this phase is unstable. Power grids are re-energized in segments to avoid cascading failures. Telecommunications lag behind electricity. Water treatment plants require time to stabilize pressure and quality. Emergency services operate under partial capacity for extended periods. This creates a liminal environment where some functions return, while others remain absent. Defensive preparation requires understanding that partial recovery is not safety. It is a transition zone with unpredictable behavior patterns. Historically, incidents of theft and conflict spike during these transitional windows, not at the height of blackout or after full restoration. Another buried factor is administrative attention. Once authorities return, visibility becomes a liability again, but for different reasons. Those who appear unusually prepared may face scrutiny regarding resource acquisition, compliance with emergency regulations, or perceived non-cooperation. This is not a political statement. It is an operational reality, observed in numerous disaster recoveries. Relief agencies prioritize need assessment, and conspicuous preparedness can complicate that assessment. Defensive moves, therefore, include normalization behaviors, gradually reintegrating into visible systems rather than abruptly, reasserting independence at a larger scale. Urban blackouts expose a structural truth about modern survival. Resilience is not synonymous with dominance. The instinct to fortify, display strength, or assert control often backfires because it misaligns with how systems fail and recover. Resilience engineering emphasizes graceful degradation and quiet recovery over rigid resistance. Households that adapt their behavior fluidly, reducing load during collapse and increasing participation during recovery, experience fewer losses across the entire arc of the event. This adaptability is a defensive asset, rarely discussed in mainstream preparedness narratives. The escalation of stakes culminates in long-term consequences that persist well after power returns. Trust networks reshuffle. Social memory forms. Those who were perceived as cooperative, discreet, and stable are reintegrated smoothly. Those associated with conflict or hoarding carry reputational damage that affects future security. Defensive preparation must therefore be evaluated across time horizons, not just during the blackout itself. Survival is not merely staying alive through darkness. It is emerging without creating new vulnerabilities that linger. From a scientific perspective, this aligns with complex adaptive systems theory. Cities are not machines. They are ecosystems. When energy input drops, the system reorganizes around new equilibria. Individuals who survive best are those whose behavior supports system stabilization rather than exacerbating imbalance. This does not mean self-sacrifice. It means strategic alignment. Defensive moves, exposed in urban blackouts, consistently reward those who understand their role as nodes within a larger network, capable of reducing strain rather than amplifying it. The final defensive insight, often overlooked, involves psychological closure. Blackouts leave cognitive residue. Hypervigilance, mistrust, and fatigue do not vanish with restored power. Defensive preparation includes intentional decompression, reassessment of supplies, and recalibration of threat perception. Failing to do this leaves individuals stuck in survival mode, impairing judgment during future disruptions. Historical analysis of communities affected by repeated outages shows that those who process events deliberately improve resilience over time, while those who remain reactive accumulate stress and vulnerability. Stepping back, a large-scale pattern emerges. Urban blackouts are not anomalies. They are previews. As energy systems age, climate volatility increases, and infrastructure complexity grows. Outages become more likely and more consequential. The quiet ending described here is not hypothetical. It is already embedded in the design limits of modern cities. Defensive preparation, when stripped of fantasy and fear, becomes an exercise in understanding these limits and positioning oneself to operate within them rather than against them. The final warning is not dramatic, but it is precise. The most dangerous moment in any blackout is not the first night, when fear is high and movement is cautious. It is the middle phase, when adaptation begins, expectations shift, and hidden pressures surface. And it is the recovery phase, when attention returns unevenly and old assumptions no longer apply. Those who survive these phases do so not because they were strongest, loudest, or most prepared in appearance, but because they understood that the world does not end loudly. It ends quietly, through a series of small failures that reward discipline, awareness, and restraint, and punish those who mistake visibility for security or strength, for resilience. That restraint is not passive. It is an active, cognitively demanding posture that requires constant recalibration. As conditions evolve, one of the most underappreciated dynamics in extended urban blackouts is temporal distortion. Without normal cues, like work schedules, digital clocks, transit rhythms, and media cycles, time perception degrades, days blur, decision-making windows feel either rushed or endless, leading to premature action or dangerous procrastination. Defensive preparation must therefore include artificial time, structuring, establishing routines for meals, checks, rest, and observation preserves executive function. Neuroscience research confirms that structured routines under stress reduce error rates and impulsive behavior, directly impacting survival outcomes. Another buried vulnerability emerges in the form of cognitive leakage. Stress narrows attention, and narrowed attention increases the likelihood of overlooking secondary threats. People fixate on visible dangers while ignoring quieter ones, like dehydration, electrolyte imbalance, or minor injuries that become infected without proper care. In blackout environments, medical infrastructure is strained or inaccessible, making small health issues disproportionately dangerous. Defensive moves exposed here involve proactive health maintenance, hydration management, basic wound care, and infection prevention are not secondary concerns. They are load-bearing elements of resilience. Historically, morbidity during prolonged outages spikes from preventable conditions rather than traumatic events. point, the environment begins to test moral frameworks. Choices about sharing, refusal, and self-preservation acquire ethical weight. These choices are not abstract. They shape social memory and future threat vectors. Defensive strategy does not demand moral compromise, but it does require clarity. Ambiguity breeds conflict. Clear internal rules about what you will and will not do under pressure reduce hesitation and stress. Psychological studies on decision-making under duress show that pre-commitment to values and thresholds reduces cognitive overload and post-event trauma. From a systems analysis perspective, urban blackouts function as stress tests that reveal hidden dependencies. People discovered what they assumed was redundant, but was not. Water access, refrigeration, lighting, communication, and security often share single points of failure. Defensive preparation, after experiencing such an event, should focus on decoupling these dependencies. True resilience emerges not from stockpiling more of the same, but from diversifying failure modes. Multiple low-signature solutions outperform single high-capability ones. This principle is central to resilient network design and applies equally at the household level. The final layer of this analysis returns to perception. After the blackout ends, narratives form. Media summaries simplify. Lessons are generalized incorrectly. Many conclude that because they survived once, they will survive again without change. This is a dangerous inference. Each blackout differs in duration, season, and context. Defensive preparation must be iterative, informed by experience, but not complacent. Post-event analysis, conducted honestly, identifies gaps that were invisible during the event itself. This reflective phase is where future survival is truly secured. Ultimately, the quiet ending described throughout this examination is not an endpoint, but a recurring condition. Blackouts are rehearsals for broader systemic stress. They strip away excess and reveal fundamentals. The defensive prep moves exposed here are not about fear. They are about alignment with reality. Light discipline, noise control, resource opacity, movement, restraint, social boundary management, health maintenance, capability masking, and temporal structure are not dramatic acts. They are subtle disciplines, practiced without audience or recognition. And that is the final, uncomfortable truth embedded in every prolonged urban blackout. Survival does not look heroic. It looks boring, invisible, and restrained. It rewards those willing to suppress instinct, manage perception, and operate below the threshold of notice. The world does not announce its ending, and it does not test everyone equally. It quietly selects for those who understood that defense, in its deepest sense, is not about resisting collapse but about staying intact while everything around you degrades. Just enough to expose those who misunderstood what survival actually demands. Staying intact. Overextended disruption requires understanding. The final, rarely discussed, layer of blackout dynamics, feedback loops. Every action taken during a prolonged outage feeds back into the environment, altering the behavior of others and reshaping the threat landscape. This means defensive preparation is never neutral. Even silence communicates something. Even absence is interpreted. The question is not whether you influence the system, but how intentionally you do so. Those who fail to recognize feedback loops often create the very conditions they fear, drawing pressure through inconsistent behavior or visible adaptation. Spikes that signal change. A critical example of this appears in energy use patterns. When power restoration occurs intermittently, many households surge consumption immediately, overloading local circuits and triggering secondary outages. This phenomenon, known in grid engineering as cold load pickup, is a predictable failure mode. Defensive preparation anticipates it. Staggered power use, delayed activation of hydro devices, and maintaining blackout mode behavior even after partial restoration reduce both infrastructure strain and social visibility. This technical detail matters because repeated outages erode trust in recovery and reintroduce scarcity psychology, resetting the entire risk cycle. Another feedback loop involves information disclosure. During blackouts, people exchange fragments of news. Who has a radio? I've heard what? Who knows when power might return? Information asymmetry confers influence, but it also attracts dependence. The hidden danger is becoming an informal hub. In network theory, hubs carry disproportionate load and fail catastrophically when defensive survival logic favors redundancy and decentralization, sharing information selectively and encouraging others to verify independently prevents consolidation of expectation and pressure onto a single node. This is not secrecy for its own sake. It is load balancing within a stressed social system. As days pass, identity erosion begins. Without external structure, people redefine themselves around immediate roles: provider, protector, negotiator, mediator. These roles harden quickly and can become traps. Someone who becomes known as capable or reliable may find it impossible to disengage later without social backlash. Defensive preparation includes role fluidity. Avoiding fixed labels preserves maneuverability. Anthropological studies of prolonged crises show that individuals who maintain ambiguous roles adapt more effectively as conditions shift, while those locked into expectations face escalating demands. The environmental dimension also evolves. Microclimates form inside buildings as heating and ventilation systems remain offline. Moisture accumulates. Mold risk increases. Air quality degrades. These slow, invisible processes undermine health and force exposure when remediation becomes urgent. Defensive prep moves here involve passive ventilation strategies, moisture control, and spatial rotation within living areas to prevent localized degradation. These are not dramatic concerns, but they shape survivability over weeks rather than days. Historically, post-blackout health issues often trace back to environmental neglect rather than acute incidents. Another underestimated factor is sleep architecture. Darkness, stress, and irregular routines disrupt circadian rhythms. Poor sleep degrades immune response, emotional regulation, and defensive survival requires protecting sleep quality, even under adverse conditions. This includes light control inside living spaces, consistent sleep timing, and minimizing nighttime disturbances. Military and emergency response research consistently identifies sleep deprivation as a primary contributor to operational failure. Yet civilian preparedness rarely addresses it explicitly. As recovery stretches on, the temptation to accelerate normalization grows. People begin to clean aggressively, reorganize, and reassert pre-outage routines. While psychologically comforting, this can expose vulnerabilities prematurely. Defensive preparation recognizes normalization as a phase, not an endpoint. Gradual reintegration reduces shock and preserves optionality. Moving too fast can deplete reserves just before a secondary disruption. A pattern documented in regions experiencing rolling blackouts or aftershocks following infrastructure damage. At a macro level, urban blackouts reveal a fundamental asymmetry between dependence and resilience. Systems dependent on constant input fail abruptly. Systems designed for variability degrade gracefully. This principle applies to technology, infrastructure, and human behavior alike. Defensive prep moves exposed throughout this analysis consistently. The line with graceful degradation, reducing reliance, diversifying methods, and accepting lower performance in exchange for stability are not signs of weakness. They are indicators of systems literacy. The danger of misunderstanding this asymmetry lies in false confidence. Many believe that having more equipment, more power, or more visibility equates to safety. In reality, these attributes increase coupling to fragile systems. When those systems fail, the fall is steeper. Defensive preparation, at its most advanced level, is about decoupling, operating effectively at lower baselines, accepting inconvenience to avoid collapse. This mindset shift separates true resilience from performative preparedness. As the blackout narrative stretches beyond immediate experience, and into memory. Societies tend to compress lessons into slogans. Be prepared, have supplies, stay calm. These are insufficient abstractions. The buried knowledge lies in nuance. How preparedness is expressed when calm is visible, and which supplies attract attention versus reduce it. Survival is not a checklist. It is a pattern of behavior maintained under pressure. And pressure does not disappear when the lights come back on. Infrastructure scars persist. Trust takes time to rebuild. Future disruptions are interpreted through the lens of past ones. Defensive preparation must therefore be informed by what failed quietly rather than what broke dramatically. The next outage may not resemble the last, but the underlying dynamics will rhyme because they are rooted in human behavior, interacting with complex systems under constraint. This is where the analysis must continue, because understanding these dynamics is only half the work. Applying them requires translating theory into lived discipline, sustained not for hours, but for days and weeks, without external validation. That translation, and the mistakes people make when attempting it, reveal the final fault lines that determine whether someone remains adaptive or becomes exposed as the system continues to fluctuate. Beneath them, the final fault lines emerge. A larger threat than external pressure. Historical case studies of survival in siege-like conditions repeatedly identify internal cohesion as a decisive factor. The environment itself continues to evolve. As blackout duration extends, informal norms stabilize. People learn which stairwells are busy, which buildings are quiet, and which times are safest to move. This normalization reduces fear, but increases predictability. Predictability, while comforting, creates vulnerability. Defensive preparation requires periodically reassessing patterns to avoid becoming legible, altering routines subtly. Varying timing and avoiding fixed schedules reduce the chance of becoming mapped by others. This principle mirrors counter-surveillance techniques used in high-risk environments, adapted here for civilian survival without adversarial framing. A critical but rarely articulated defensive move involves managing curiosity. As boredom sets in, people seek stimulation. Exploration increases. Windows open. Conversations lengthen. These behaviors leak information. Curiosity-driven exposure often precedes incidents during extended outages. Defensive discipline includes resisting the urge to observe or engage unnecessarily. Information gained rarely outweighs risk incurred. This restraint is difficult precisely because it runs counter to human instinct under monotony. Yet it consistently correlates with better outcomes. As weeks pass in some scenarios, supply chains begin to partially reconstitute through informal channels. Markets reappear. Goods circulate unevenly. This phase tempts people to re-enter economic activity prematurely. While necessary, eventually, early participation carries risk. Prices fluctuate wildly. Trust is fragile. Transactions expose resources and movement patterns. Defensive preparation treats early markets cautiously, prioritizing observation over participation until norms stabilize. Economic anthropology shows that early entrants into post-disruption markets often incur losses or conflicts that late entrants avoid. The final, deepest layer of blackout defense concerns identity after disruption. People who define themselves by preparedness alone struggle to transition back to normality, carrying defensive behaviors into contexts where they become maladaptive. This creates long-term social friction and isolation. True resilience includes the ability to stand down, to relinquish heightened posture without losing capability. This transition requires intentional disengagement, reassessment, and re-entry. Without it, survival mode becomes a permanent lens, distorting perception and decision-making long after the threat has passed. When viewed as a whole, the quiet ending of the world, described throughout this analysis, reveals a consistent pattern. Collapse does not announce itself. It tests individuals incrementally through boredom, fatigue, ambiguity, and social pressure. Those who fail rarely do so because they lacked supplies or knowledge. They fail because they mismanaged attention, visibility, and adaptation over time. Defensive prep moves exposed for urban blackouts are therefore less about equipment and more about behavior under constraint. The final warning is subtle but unavoidable. Modern cities condition people to outsource resilience to systems they do not understand. When those systems fail quietly, the margin between stability and exposure narrows without warning. Survival belongs to those who recognize that margin early and operate within it deliberately, without drama, without spectacle, and without assuming that danger looks like chaos. It often looks like normal life, continuing just long enough for the unprepared to reveal themselves. And it is here, at this edge between endurance and error, that the real lesson of urban blackouts lives. Not in what breaks, but in what persists, and in the quiet discipline required to remain among those who persist, while the rest of the world, slowly, almost politely, comes undone. What persists, ultimately, is not a stockpile or a tactic, but a mindset calibrated to operate without reassurance. Urban blackouts strip away feedback. There is no dashboard that tells you how well you are doing. No authority confirms that your choices are correct. This absence creates a psychological vacuum that many fill with unnecessary action. Movement becomes a proxy for control. Noise becomes a substitute for certainty. Defensive preparation at its most advanced level involves tolerating uncertainty without trying to collapse it prematurely. This tolerance is not passive acceptance. It is disciplined patience, grounded in probabilistic thinking. Probabilistic thinking is rarely discussed in civilian preparedness, yet it governs every decision under blackout conditions. Each action carries a likelihood of benefit and a likelihood of exposure. Turning on a light may improve immediate function, but increases detection probability. Seeking information may reduce uncertainty, but increases social entanglement. Even rest carries risk if it reduces vigilance. Defensive survival is therefore a continuous optimization problem under incomplete information. Those who intuitively balance probabilities rather than seeking certainty adapt more effectively as conditions shift. A final buried vulnerability lies in assumption inertia. People assume that because something has not happened yet, it will not happen at all. This cognitive bias, known as normalcy bias, is one of the most lethal factors in disasters. In blackout scenarios, It manifests as delayed adaptation. People wait too long to adjust behavior, believing stability will return before thresholds are crossed. Defensive preparation requires acting before discomfort becomes a crisis. Early adaptation feels excessive. Late adaptation feels impossible. The quiet ending exploits this gap relentlessly. As infrastructure stress accumulates, secondary failures become more likely than primary ones. Fires sparked by improvised cooking, injuries from falls in dark stairwells, conflicts over misunderstood signals. These are not headline events, but they account for the majority of harm. Defensive prep moves exposed throughout this analysis consistently aim to reduce exposure to secondary failure pathways. This is why they appear understated. They do not prevent disaster. They prevent compounding error. When viewed through this lens, the 9 defensive prep moves are not discrete actions, but expressions of a single principle. Reduce coupling. Reduce how tightly your survival is bound to fragile systems, volatile social dynamics, and visible signals. Loosely coupled systems fail slowly and recover gracefully. Tightly coupled systems fail suddenly and catastrophically. This principle governs engineering, ecology, and human survival alike. The uncomfortable implication is that many popular preparedness narratives focus on the wrong metrics. They emphasize capacity rather than adaptability, visibility rather than subtlety, and control rather than alignment. Urban blackouts expose these mismatches mercilessly. They reward those who can operate below maximum capacity without degradation, who can remain functionally anonymous, and who can shift posture without attracting attention. The world does not need to collapse completely for these dynamics to matter. Partial failures are enough. Rolling outages, localized grid stress, and infrastructure degradation already produce much that rehearse these conditions. Each one is an opportunity to observe behavior, refine discipline, and identify blind spots. Those who treat outages as mere inconveniences miss the signal. Embedded within them, the final insight, and the one most resisted, is this: survival in modern collapse scenarios is less about preparing for the worst moment than about surviving the long middle. The period where nothing dramatic happens, where boredom sets in, where people relax just enough to become visible, and where small decisions accumulate into irreversible exposure. This is where the world ends quietly, not with catastrophe, but with complacency. And if there is a closing truth worth carrying forward, it is not a tactic or a checklist, but a recognition. When the lights go out and stay out, the environment does not immediately become hostile. It becomes honest. It reveals how dependent, how visible, and how reactive we have become. Defense, then, is not an act of aggression or isolation. It is the discipline of becoming less legible to a stressed system, of consuming less signal while maintaining internal coherence. Those who understand this do not look prepared. They look absent. And in a darkened city, where attention is the most dangerous currency of all, absence is not weakness. It is survival.